An Offer from a Gentleman book chapters that don't have Benedict and Sophie together after they've already met are like season 4 scenes that don't have Benedict or Sophie in them. Unwanted and unnecessary.
Alright guys, catch up with you later.
Hello romance girlies, I'm LadyJenevia, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. I was originally aiming to wait until next month to do a new Bridgerton season 4 video moving through the next 2 chapters of the book, but then when I was working on outlines and trying to plan which February videos I would be doing and when, I skimmed the next 2 chapters, those being 4 and 5, and I realized these chapters are not as fun because they make up the brief and yet somehow still too long separation of Benedict and Sophie after she disappeared from the masquerade. They don't get to have their reunion until chapter 6. However, we're going through the entire book, so we must power through these chapters before we can get back to the fun stuff, that being Benedict and Sophie being cute together.
I guess what their heart desires and I guess what society kind of desires for them.
Yours is better than mine. That was
That's
so
not
much better.
true.
It is. That was clearer. Yeah.
True.
By the way, Kimiko has a vet appointment in February. She has to get her VACCINES updated. Don't tell her what I said. Not that you could, even if you tried, because she doesn't speak English. But in honor of Kimiko staying on top of her health and because I'm using Patreon to pay for her appointment, I've activated a discount code. So if you use the code Kimiko20 to join anytime from now through February 28th, you will get 20% off of your first month's membership. And once we get into February, I will be doing a Patreon exclusive video ranking all of my first-time watches from January of this year, and I've logged at least 40 films that I've watched for the first time in January by the time this video gets posted. I don't know the exact number because it was 40 when I recorded this video, but by the time this video gets posted, it might be even more. Spoiler alert, the worst film I've seen this month was Culpa Tuya, but if you want to hear me fully lambast that will be for Patreon only.
I never want to see you again! You suck! Ah!
Chapter 4 opens with Lady Whistledown reporting on how Benedict was spotted spending time at the masquerade with a woman in a silver dress, but no one, including Lady Whistledown, has any idea who she is. We cut back to the masquerade where Benedict is quite angry that Lady Danbury interrupted his pursuit of Sophie, and he is now outside the front of the house and she's disappeared. He thinks about how they had a soul-searing connection, that from the moment he felt her presence, the air had been alive, crackling with tension and excitement. And in meeting Sophie, he felt alive in a way he hadn't felt for years, as if everything were suddenly new and sparkling and full of passion and dreams. But now Benedict is left scrambling for ways to figure out who she is. He doesn't know the color of her eyes because of the dimly lit candles being the source of lights for them at this party. He's also very aware that she's trying to stay hidden and keep her identity a secret. He's thinking about some of the hints and clues he was able to pick up on during their conversation, but ultimately nothing feels like enough of a lead. However, he still has her glove. You know, the one he removed from her arm so he could get mouthy with that very arm. He sniffs the glove and is surprised to find that it smells musty, as if it had been packed away in an attic trunk for many years. He looks more closely at the glove and finds the initials SLG, in case anyone didn't know or they forgot. Those are the initials of Sophie's grandmother, the mother of her father, Richard, or as I call him, Dick. We don't like him. By the way, the cutaway image I use for that character is Liam Cunningham in Northanger Abbey. It took far too long for me to realize that that was him because I'm so much more accustomed to seeing him with a beard, but I highly recommend following Liam Cunningham, Irish icon and an extremely loud supporter of Palestine. Donation links, as always, are in the description box. Liam's great, and that reminds me I need to watch Hunger. I added it to my Letterboxd watch list while I was outlining this video.
Or as we say in Ireland, Chucky our law.
Sophie's glove also has a family crest on it, but Benedict doesn't recognize that crest, so he decides that he will ask his mother. Meanwhile, Sophie has returned home and changed out of all of her fancy wear. She's put back the various items she used and borrowed, including Araminta's shoes and Rosamund's rouge. She gets ready for bed and thinks about Benedict, whom she regards as being handsome, strong, and debonair.
I want a chance at him!
But she's also very sad over the fact that in her mind, a man of his stature would never be with an earl's bastard or a housemaid. So she curls up in bed with a stuffed toy dog and she cries. Back to Benedict, he asks Violet about the glove and she immediately recognizes the crest as being of the Earl of Penwood. The G stands for Gunningworth. Reminder for anyone who needs it that they changed the book name of Gunningworth to Gun on the show. The title of Earl of Penwood recently passed out of that family and went to a distant cousin because Richard, aka Dick, didn't have any male heirs. When Benedict is pushing for more answers about the initials SLG, Violet tells Benedict that he might as well tell her everything because she's going to figure it out anyway, even if he tries to keep that to himself. When Benedict says that he met someone at the masquerade, Violet is delighted. Remember that Book Violet is very determined to get her children married. But once things are clarified about the glove, Violet says that she doesn't like the Dowager Countess, meaning Araminta, because she finds her to be very cold and ambitious. She sees Araminta as the type of person who would marry off a daughter to a 70-year-old man if he had a title, such as Duke. Violet, however, says, and I quote, "I would allow my children to marry paupers if it would bring them happiness." Do you smell that? Is that foreshadowing? Violet asks if Benedict has feelings for one of Araminta's daughters, and he says that he never got her name, just her glove. And Violet says, "I'm not even going to ask how you obtained her glove." And Benedict, being who he is,
A slutacious hawk.
he responds, "It was all very innocent, I assure you." And because this is the time for family banter, Violet responds, "I have far too many sons to believe that." Violet!
I can't believe that you just said that.
Sexual intercourse.
Violet examines the glove and notes, like Benedict did, that the glove seems quite old, so she theorizes that the S could stand for Sarah, as that was the late Earl's mother's name. She tells Benedict that the family lives at Penwood House, and conveniently, Violet knows exactly where that is. It's just a few blocks away. She gives him directions and also tells him that the Countess's daughters are named Rosamond and Posy. Violet presses Benedict to tell her all about whatever happens once he goes there, and adds that it's really nice to see him in love. And he tries to deny that this is the case, but we know what this is.
Where does the pollen go?
So, off he goes. Back at Penwood House, Araminta is being herself.
Ugh.
She's being downright awful to Sophie, and she confronts her about the white slippers, you know, the ones that Sophie had worn to the masquerade. The shoes are brand new, and yet somehow one of the heels is now scuffed.
That's suspicious.
Araminta doesn't know yet that Sophie went to the ball, but she does believe that someone wore her shoes. Sophie does her best to play it cool. She offers to polish the shoes, but Araminta says that that won't work because the heels are covered in satin. Instead, Araminta tells Sophie to polish all of her shoes, and Sophie is filled with dread because Araminta has something along the lines of 80 pairs of shoes. Araminta seems to be about to issue more orders to Sophie, but they are interrupted by a butler saying that a gentleman has just arrived. Now, gee, I wonder who that could be. Araminta begins issuing orders to the butler, prepare tea and biscuits, put out the best silver, and as for Sophie, she needs to go upstairs and make sure that Rosamond's and Posy's hair is properly dressed, and then she tells her to tell Rosamond to lock her in the closet. Sophie asks Araminta why she keeps her there, and Araminta responds that she finds Sophie useful. After Sophie does both of her stepsister's hair, she asks Posy to lock her in the closet, explaining how Araminta had ordered her to polish all of the shoes, and she was supposed to ask Rosamond, but just can't bring herself to do so. Posy is the so-called nicer sister. That wouldn't be how I would describe her, but I'm a feminine rage girly, not a feminine forgiveness girly. Forgive whomst. What flames of revolution have you lit lately, Posy?
Our friendship is built on our mutual distrust of England.
That's the end of chapter 4, and if you want more discussions of feminine rage, I did somewhat recently post a video on The Housemaid, because that's got a film adaptation coming out in December of this year. I've been covering a fair bit of source material already this year. We're not even finished with January, but we've talked about the book Rule, which is the source material for the film adaptation Marked Men, which I have already posted my spoiler-free review of because they gave me a screener. Can you believe that the same studio behind the After films made a new romance film that wasn't complete garbage? I could hardly believe it. We will be doing the spoiler review for that next month during the week of the VOD release.
So 2 ass loads.
Wow.
I also posted my video on Stephen King's The Monkey because Osgood Perkins is doing a film adaptation that is coming out next month, and I am ready to be there opening weekend. Theo James and Tatiana Maslany being terrorized by a scary toy? Yes, absolutely.
Are you sure?
Yes?
I also recently picked up another book from the library for another project that I cannot talk about right now because I'm under an embargo, but my first video about that will be coming out in a couple of weeks from now when the feature embargo lifts. Now, moving on to chapter 5. Benedict has arrived at Penwood Park and he has the glove in his coat pocket and is kept waiting for about 15 minutes in the sitting room. Araminta comes down first and says her daughters will be down soon. She's surprised when Benedict mentions that he hasn't met either of them yet because it would be odd to come over and call upon eligible young women that he hasn't met yet, and the implications would be that he's especially interested in them if he's seeking them out in that way. I'm probably going to speed run through a lot of these details because honestly, who cares? Let's get to chapter 6 already and have the Banofi reunion.
Don't scream at me.
Araminta is trying to push Benedict towards Rosamund, and because he can sense that she's showing favoritism, he says that he's really looking forward to meeting Posey. That is so petty, and I love it.
You don't even exist to me!
Araminta is being rude to her staff. I hope they put something in her food.
Death.
Benedict thinks about how his own mother treats the Bridgerton servants very well, and thus were utterly devoted to the family. Do you smell the putrid stench of classist propaganda? Who wrote this line? The Downton Abbey guy? You pay their salary and are somewhat less horrible to them than other employment options. All the while they have to do everything that you won't do for yourself, and you want to congratulate yourself for that. Araminta is talking trash about Sophie when she's not even there, and Benedict feels bad for Sophie even though he doesn't even know her, or so he thinks. Shh. Reunion's happening next chapter. Don't tell him yet. Rosamund and Posey come downstairs, and when he sees them and meets them, he immediately knows that neither of them is his lady in silver. He's polite, but also disappointed, and he goes out of his way to be nicer to Posey because of how obvious Araminta is in favoring Rosamund. Benedict starts trying to fish for information about whether or not there are any other children in the family, or perhaps extended relatives, since he's thinking maybe his lady in silver is a Gunningworth cousin. Araminta is suspicious and tells him there's no one else, and Benedict tries to play it off as him having come from a big happy family, and that's the only reason he's asking. Rosamund brings up the lady in silver that Benedict was spending time with at the masquerade ball and asks who she was, and Benedict simply refers to her as a mystery woman, playing it off as a mystery he's keeping from them, as opposed to him also having no idea who she is. Benedict politely excuses himself, and once he's out the door, Araminta notes how brief of a visit that was, and puts together that he wasn't there to meet either of her daughters. They spy on Benedict through a window and observe that he's looking at a glove he pulled out of his pocket. Posey says that they have some gloves with the Penwood crest embroidered on the hem, and Araminta goes pale. Now, she's a mean person, but she's not completely clueless. She has put together that Sophie was the woman in silver and that he came here looking for her, and Sophie was in fact the one who wore her shoes. So Araminta storms upstairs and confronts Sophie and orders her to leave. She's officially kicking her out, and I'm not going to rehash the details of this conversation because I usually try to outline these videos in a way where we're having fun, we're basking in the romance, and I don't want to dwell in a space of her being abused yet again by her lifelong abuser. Araminta doesn't want Sophie to leave until she finishes polishing all of her shoes, which if Sophie were to do that, it would take her until the next morning to complete the task. Sophie doesn't want to finish the shoes, so she thinks about what she's going to do now. She only has a few pounds to her name, staying in the London slums would be dangerous, and buying a ticket out of London will eat up over half of what little money she has. But she decides that leaving London is the better option. She also doesn't want to accidentally run into Benedict, and if she's still in London, she thinks that she will feel tempted to try to get a glimpse of him. She's worried about what might happen if he were to ever find her again. Maybe he will be angry, maybe he'll want to keep her as his mistress, or maybe he won't recognize her at all.
I hate to break it to you.
But she's absolutely certain that his reaction will not be to propose marriage. Sophie notices a pair of jeweled shoe clips that will easily detach from the pair of Araminta shoes they're currently on. And they are small enough to fit into her pocket. Do it, Sophie. The feminine urge to rob the evil rich. It's not crime, it's justice. It's reparations for your years of mistreatment. Sophie takes the shoe clips, and however many hours on, Posey lets Sophie out against Araminta's wishes. Sophie packs up her few things and she leaves. Now, there's not a whole lot for me to go over and discuss for this sliver of the book, since I think the more fun or interesting conversations will be about other chapters that we will get to in future videos. The one thing I would propose, and of course I will open things up to the audience to share their opinions, is whether or not much of what's in these chapters is necessary. I don't think Benedict needs to come to the Gunn household at all, although I did say that I want to see him play detective. I think you can just as easily save time by having Araminta immediately realize that Sophie wore her shoes and kick her out of the house. Why are we prolonging this separation period? Let's just skip to the reunion. Spoiler alert, there is a time jump between chapter 5 and 6 of 3 years. I'm skeptical about them trying to do something like that on the show, particularly because when you have characters like Gregory and Hyacinth who have these drastic growth spurts from season to season, I don't think it really makes sense for them to try to do a time jump within a season. The time jump happens between seasons because your business model is so abysmal that it takes you 2 years to release a new season. Maxton Hall can't relate. We're getting season 2 this year. Do any of you want a Maxton Hall review? If they had cared about doing a time jump in that way, they would have needed to do the Masquerade in season 3, but they didn't do that, so here we are. You could simply speed run through chapters 4 and 5 in season 4 in mere minutes. Let's just run a theoretical here. If episode 1 ends with Sophie running away from the Masquerade ball and Benedict being all wounded emotionally that he doesn't know where the love of his life went, then you can hurry through the discovery of the scuffed shoe at the beginning of episode 2 and get the Benofi reunion by the time we're midway through that episode. Just give Benedict half an episode to go all woe is me, where is my lady love, and then he can meet up with Sophie and feel a new spark, a spark he doesn't realize is the same spark he already felt, the very spark that he's been searching for. An alternative would be that episode 1 ends with Araminta making the discovery about the shoes and kicking Sophie out, so then episode 2 would open with some sort of minuscule time jump. Let's say it's been a month or something like that. I don't know how long these seasons last, but nothing that's long enough to where you would have to deal with Gregory and Hyacinth looking the same before and after said time jump. And you can quickly go into the Benofi reunion and the entire romantic journey that results from that. I don't particularly want to watch a long moping period for Benedict anyway. His season 3 material was more than enough of a chore to watch, so let's just get to the good stuff. I want to watch the cute, fluffy, frothy, saccharine banter and giggling. I want it to be so sweet that it melts on your tongue like candy floss, or a more accurate reference for me, kakigori. I want to see the good stuff. Stop playing naive like you don't know what the audience wants. You know exactly what the audience wants to see.
Yeah, it's called flirting, you idiot.